Hey everybody, Doc here. Welcome to the Sheepdog Project. Tiring day today, but a rewarding day. Tim Kennedy is with me as always, my co-host. Would you not agree, my brother?
Yeah, it's been an intense, good day for you more than it's been for me. Mike has been teaching an 8-hour block of a TCCC based course. For those that you don't know, it's how to treat traumatic wounds in combat. It's how to keep blood in good guys. And so he's been up in front of a sold out class here with us, and I don't know, kicking ass, I think.
First day went really well. The first 8 hours is in the can, as they say. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was engaging. Students brought their A game, which always helps. Everybody showed up eager to learn. This is information that I feel it is incumbent upon me to share with people. I mean, this is stuff that I've learned that can save lives. So I feel that I have a duty and obligation to share this knowledge with others. And that's the sheepdog ethos. It really is.
I don't think there's another person on this planet that has same perspective as you, that has obviously the same experiences. We are creatures of creation and in our kind of genetic disposition, but from the moment that we come out of that womb, from that moment on, all of the things that influence our lives, every experience that we have, that dictates and that creates who we are as people. And yours is completely unique. There's not another person like you on this planet. In the entire, human condition, nobody has your experiences. Your resume has been in the battles, as an SF, as a ranger, now as a full doctor, still with the purpose and the point of saving lives and taking lives. So watching you interact, there's a huge, not disparity, but there's a vast difference of the knowledge in that room. There's ER nurses and PAs and paramedics that work for police units, and then there's somebody that has never been to a CPR class before. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was impressed by all of them today, even though, especially the ones who had no medical training previously. Like I say, they totally brought their A game. They came ready to learn, and my number one goal is that everybody walks away with this with some tools in their toolbox that they can save a life with. And if that is met, then for me, that's mission success.
I love that every opportunity, it's not just let's plug these holes, let's get a tourniquet on, okay, CPR, mouth to mouth. No, it's like you are a shooter first. The first thing that you do in this course is you draw your gun, you do your work before you even think about taking care of a casualty, doing triage, trying to assess a wound. You are engaging the threat and you're moving towards gunfire. I mean, that is the foundation of the very first thing. And drilling that and watching the students, at first they're so timid and so reserved and so apprehensive and hesitant to know what to do, and if it's okay that they do it, can they yell, do I draw my gun, and then watching this metamorphosis occur, and they come out of their shell and they're like, all right, I get why I'm here. I signed up for this, I asked for this, now I'm going to do it. It's pretty awesome.
It is awesome, and everybody is a shooter first, and you have to be. In order to be a sheepdog, you have to be a shooter first. And that's one thing that I think our whole sheepdog curriculum, but especially the spectrum of tactical emergency care, the sheepdog trauma curriculum, drives home, is that you're an operator first, you're a shooter first, whoever you are. And your first point of first aid is to drill the guy who caused the wounds, to put that bad guy down. Because that is the first point. That's the starting point of saving a life, is neutralizing that threat. And on the subject of neutralizing that threat, we have a very special guest with us today. The number one pistolero of the Sheepdog team, Alex Acosta, is here with us. Welcome to the Sheepdog Project, my friend.
Hey guys, how you doing? Appreciate y'all bringing me on here. It's going to be a pleasure to talk to all y'all out there as well. Look forward to talking about how we generate performance, why we are here to know how to use the skill, but to establish that why. Like, why do we go to the range every day? Why do we practice these skills that Doc here was teaching us? Having a cause that motivates us to be better people, to be sheepdogs, to be there for those people that we care about.
No, I mean, I've been shooting for my entire life. I was raised as a shooter. I was raised by a shooter. I was raised by a hunter. And I've trained under some of the best shooters on the planet. And, the first time that I shot with you, I was like, hell yeah.
Same thing for me. That's coming from 3+ decades of experience in the military, all of it in special operations. And the first time I stepped on the range with this man, I was like, I don't know shit.
Yeah, it's a treat. So, I mean, obviously your approach Alex is, he's a primary instructor for us, for both the instructors here at Sheepdog and the students that come. He's the one that's going to be driving the shooting curriculum. When you come and submit videos and asking how am I going to get better, if you're a high level guy, Alex is going to be looking at that stuff. How? I mean, you're young. Let's get about like how the hell did you get to where you are now in the not only as a precision shooter, still getting better, but where did the passion come from? Where's the genesis and origin of Alex Acosta, the shooter?
Sure. So I spent about 3 years really watching people around me shoot. I came from a household where guns were kind of frowned upon. My dad never really was into it, and I finally got introduced to a gentleman who was former SF himself, but he was more of that thinker warrior. And he really impressed upon me that one, he recognized that I have a high modality to want to protect those people I care about, and he really challenged me. He asked me, well, what are you doing to be able to position yourself to to do that, to take care of those people? And it really struck a chord with me, and I can remember very viscerally where I had to be honest with myself and say, I'm saying a thing, but I'm not doing what I need to do to be prepared. And from there, the genesis of my mentality has been wanting to understand how performance is generated and breaking down everything that leads up to the breaking of that sear and sending that round.
The first step that you took, I think unfortunately a lot of people never even take that step. They dabble in it and they play at it, but the first step is, you said it in such an eloquent way. You had a visceral reaction with the realization that you did not have the tools to do that and that you had to develop that. And I think Tim and I both have seen people go through their lives, go through careers, essentially kind of going through the motions in this constant state of denial of I'm at this level way up here when they're really not. They're at this level down there here, and they think it's much more dangerous to think you have the tools and not have the tools than recognize that you don't have the tools, because that's how you start to build, and that's exactly what you did.
No, absolutely. One of the things that I feel like I encounter more than anything is people conflate so often ego with skill. Like they have this notion that I've gotten better than all the people around me, so there's no longer a need for me to continue to ask myself, how can I do better? How can I push past where I am today? And from that perspective, it's become a question of or more a mentality of being what I call a continual student, like never being complacent with anything that I know, always knowing that someone else out there is going to do something at some level better than I am, understanding how they did that, and then bringing that back, codifying and bringing it into a scalable system that I can then show to other people.
Yeah, it's Musashi said, conquer yourself of yesterday, and then you can move on to conquer other men. And that's exactly what you're talking about. If you start using the yardstick, the false yardstick, you're just going to look for slower friends. You're going to start looking for fatter friends, okay, to hang out with. Hey, there's a Rodney Dangerfield joke. I got to get fatter actors. You're going to start putting yourself in a position where, well, I'm going to be the alpha among this group if I can't be the alpha among that group. But the person you really have to compete against is who you were yesterday morning.
But that is so idiotic when you're thinking about the application of this tool. This tool is designed for a single purpose, to save life, and effectively by taking it. And if you are letting your ego get in the way of how efficiently you're using that tool, I mean, how selfish of a creature are you? I get it. Shooting is fun. Like, there is a recreational aspect to it. It's fun to go out there and shoot tannerite. I love eating meat that I hunted myself. Like, there's nothing like the connection that you have to your own food when you've tracked it, when you've shot it, when you watched it die, when you cleaned it yourself, when you processed it yourself, and you're carving out every little bite that you're going to put on the dinner table for your family. That is a very intimate experience. That is part of shooting. But in the application that we're talking about, especially occupationally and professionally, I've served with guys that have never had that not that existential moment where they take a look at themselves, but that realization that they have to dedicate themselves to this idea of improving by using this tool as best as it can be.
Maybe y'all can help me out with this, because again, for me, it comes back to, a lot of times people get into this situation where they're so concerned with the competition amongst the people around them that they forget about what motivated them or what brought them to the skill in the first place. So to say that, for me, learning these skills for practical application, again being a self-defense type modality, it's never been a question of, let me be the fastest amongst the people around me just to be the fastest. I want to know how to use the tool under duress in such a way that I never question what I'm going to fall back to. And I think, Doc, we kind of hit on that this morning with our medical students, that I saw like a light blink, a light turn on in a lot of people's eyes, where they say, okay, I'm here at this medical course, but I'm not here just to go home and say that I now know how to apply a tourniquet. I now know how to use this tool and have this new base of skill, and I'm going to be able to apply it in such a way because I care. I care about the people around me, and that's my impetus to be here. Like, it's not what I originally thought I was here for. It's now something completely different.
No, exactly right. And it's we approach training in very much the same way. Is you have to. It's not enough to just know how to use the tool. Anybody can walk up to the firing line and draw and take forever to do it and shoot and ring the steel and feel pretty good about themselves. Hey, I hit a Coke can sized target at however many meters. But that's not what you're doing. And that's not, those are the people that, they put their gun back in their car and they drive home and they feel pretty good, and they posted a little YouTube video of them ringing steel, but were they doing it in a practical application? And I approach medical training the same way. It's not just enough that I showed you how to do task X, task Y, the tourniquet, the chest seal, packing gauze, whatever it might be. It's, this has to be drilled into your head again and again and again. Muscle memory, like you said, stress inoculation. When you're under stress, when your lizard brain takes over, when you are tired, and there's something that you missed, you weren't there for this, is I actually had somebody ask me when we were going over casualty carries. They said, well, yeah, but when the chips are down, aren't you going to have a lot of adrenaline, and won't something like that be a little bit easier? And it was a legitimate question. I'm not belittling the fact that they asked that question by any means. I think it's a completely legitimate question. And the fact of the matter is, if you've been in a running gunfight for 3 hours and you've been pinned down in the back of that strip mall with a tourniquet on somebody's leg, trying to call out for help, and that's the time that there's a break in the gunfire and you're going to try to make it to where that SWAT team is, you're on reserves, you're running on fumes, and you're completely have to rely on proper technique, things that have been drilled into your brain because of muscle memory and stress inoculation.
Stress, that's a hard, difficult thing to recreate on the range. There's huge safety implications, ramifications that have to be implemented while we're training. By no means am I encouraging anyone to listen to this that you need to go to the range, put your battle belt on, get your trick custom competitive gun out and start doing burpees and have a barbell next to you. It's a nuanced, troubled process to be able to create this stress on the range. We have a lot of different ways that we do it. What are some of the recommendations that you would give to somebody that wants to start going down this similar path? Where do they start?
Absolutely. So, if you're the type of shooter that's used to, flat range drills, not used to elevated heart rate or anything, I think the first thing that you could begin to do is introduce mental cycles. Like, I'm going to now force you to think on the range, and that could be anything. That could be as simple as having a target that has multiple shapes, multiple colors, with numbers on that target, and then having a buddy with you, and then your buddy is going to tell you, on an action command, what targets you're going to engage in what order. And what a lot of people find real quick is that just simply adding that basic mental cycle causes and induces all manner of havoc, in which they fall back to a level of training that they thought they had passed years ago. But what you realize is you've never pushed yourself to say, I'm going to now operate or create performance in a dynamic environment, a dynamic situation. Dynamic in this case is just, we're thinking about one thing: color shapes and numbers.
The people that shoot steel a lot, it's this watching their accuracy go from a normal 40 by 20, and then putting them back on paper, and their group size has quadrupled in 2 or 3 shooting iterations. Reversely, somebody that shoots on paper and they have those nice keyhole targets where they like everything right in that 10, but they never try to speed up. They just want everything in the X. And as long as everything's in that X, those bullets are touching each other, they're comfortable. But then you put them on steel and you see a draw time of 6-7 seconds because they've never been outside of their comfort zone. The flat range is a deadly place, not only because there's guns there and there's people that aren't necessarily training, but their minds aren't on the right thing, which is to get better. They just want to shoot rounds, or they want to plink steel, or they want their nice little grouping, and they forget the reason why they should be there.
No, I think if we were to summarize the problem, it's that people approach their range training in an unstructured way. Like, there is no progression about the way that they approach the range. A lot of guys, like you said, they'll go to the range for that feedback of the bullet on steel, or people will go for the feedback of the tiny group on paper. But what are you actually accomplishing? Like, how is that going to help you in the real world as soon as the environment becomes dynamic? I mean, I'd wager to say that it's not, or it wouldn't. So I think what we're getting at here is that everyone at home, and everyone listening, has to find and develop a way to create structure about their range sessions. That you have to learn how to focus on a specific thing, meter your progression, test it, and then move on to that next skill base.
What would you recommend? If somebody's listening to this right now and they're going to go out tomorrow and they're going to break that cycle of, I'm going to go shoot, which means absolutely nothing. I'm going to go shoot. I'm going to go for that instant gratification of plinking steel. Fast food culture. Bang, plink, bang, plink, bang, plink. I feel like I did something. I'm getting back in the car. I'm going home. So they're going out tomorrow with their concealed carry weapon. They show up to the range tomorrow. Where do you recommend that they start?
Yeah, the first thing I'd say is ask yourself this question. That's, what do I feel I'm least proficient in? Where am I lacking the most skill? Is it my draw stroke? Is it clearing a cover garment? Is it actually getting on target and presenting? Is it the time from presentation to breaking that trigger? Identify one solo piece within that puzzle and laser focus on it. And the key really is simplifying every range trip to laser focusing on one specific skill within the use of the tool. Just so many people go to the range and blast 300 rounds and they say, oh, it was a great range trip. But if I were to ask you the question, what did you actually accomplish? What were you working on? What did you focus on? I'd say not many people out there could answer that question definitively.
I mean, blowing a few hundred rounds at the range. Do you even need to go to the range to get better?
You absolutely do not. I think it's another piece that people miss out so much on is dry fire at home. People love that feedback of going to the range, hearing that gun go off, seeing the steel ring, or hearing the steel ring, seeing that tiny group develop on paper. But for me, and for all of us in this room, I know for a fact that The range is really just a way to check up on the progress that on the skills that I'm practicing at home dry firing. I dry fire 3 to 4 times a week, 15 minutes each time, focusing on a specific skill. And I go to the range to check on that, shooting no more than 50 to 100 rounds. It's really my way to just check how I'm actually progressing, to verify that what I'm doing at home dry fire is working.
So my shooting this week, didn't get to shoot today. Normally I'm a Monday, Wednesday, Friday shooter. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday are kind of my dry fire days. And this week I actually have like a program of what I was doing on each day. Ironically, like you just said, on Tuesday, Shane and I were drilling the shape, number, and color targets. And we're timing our response time from the moment the buzzer went off, beep, draw. As soon as the beep went, you would get the target that you're supposed to engage. And we're trying to see how fast we could get our brain to connect to what we're supposed to get our sight picture, sight alignment, trigger squeeze, breath control, get that round off. That's all happening while you're drawing. That's a lot of complex things when you're adding a positive identification of a target. So that was 2 days this week. And then we did a lot of slow aim fire dot drills on our second day at the range. Everything else, I did par times. Like if you pull, we're sitting next to my safe here. If you pulled all of my guns out, besides the ones that are for home protection, they're all in dry firing configuration. The magazines right now are loaded with dummy rounds. Like that's how often we've been doing it. Last night was Thursday, so I dry fired last night. I was doing par draws, so from the time I would take from my holster to the time that the hammer would drop, I wanted it to be exactly 3 seconds. Just trying to get everything, and I was recording myself with my iPhone, and I'd go back and look, because sometimes even I'd be like, oh yeah, that was 3 seconds, but sometimes it's not. You have to go back and look. What is like a schedule for you and your regiment and some of the drills that you do?
Sure. So I'm on, like I said earlier, I'm on a similar schedule. Anywhere in the week, I try to get, again, those 3 to 4 dry fire days where, I'll use this week in specific. I've been focusing on my ability to register what I'm pointing at with, both my dominant and support thumb on target, and verifying that my sights are lined up with what I'm pointing at. So, I'm getting kind of to that point where, I'm moving back into a what I call a speed phase. I'm trying to up my speed, getting on target. And so right now I've identified that what I can work on more than anything is how I point to that target. Again, a lot of people, I think, adapt themselves to the gun, and I think that's asked backwards. I think what you need to learn how to do is adapt.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, man, adapt. And I don't know, it's one of the things that I've been so confused about. Like, how do we get to this place where people do that? Our bodies already know how to move. Like if I ask anyone on the range, like anyone, it could be the first time they've ever held a gun, holster a gun, point at something, and everyone's going to take their index finger and point at a target. Well, if I show you how to come out of a holster with that index finger riding alongside the barrel, and I tell you to do the same thing, and now I ask you the question, where are your sights? 99% of the time people are going to say, I'm looking at where my sights are. So, generate, again, going back to that base generation of performance, that people approach it from the complete opposite end of the problem, making, again, the generation of performance more complex than it needs to be.
One of the most important things I think is a takeaway from this, and it's true with this type of training, it's true with any type of training. There's an old saying, the best way to eat an elephant is in very small bites. And you talked about it, and you talked about it, Tim, about you go to the range with a specific, you don't have the entire tri or quadrifold menu out in front of you. Not, we're going to the range, we're going to practice everything. That sounds cool, but that's not realistic. You go to the range to practice one thing. I'm going to drill down one thing, and I'm going to do that one thing. And we did it today. We're going to keep putting tourniquets on until we get it right. We're going to keep doing whatever it is until we get it right. And if you try to do too much, the best way to succeed at nothing is to try to do everything, and you can't do that. And that's such good advice, and I hope people heed that. And one of the things in particular that it totally hit off a spark in my head when you said it, when you talked about practicing clearing your concealment garment. And nobody does that. So, and in Texas, when you go to the range to get your license here in Texas, it's really just about making sure the pointy end of the bullet and the pointy end of the gun are going in the same direction, and you're generally kind of safe so that we can certify you. Not we're going to make you a master of concealed carry. But nobody practices that. And it's I've done it at ranges where I've had a range safety dude come over and hey man, what are you doing? Well, I'm going from the draw. And it's like, well, that's unsafe. You can't do that. It's like, that's not unsafe. I've done this before. So people get discouraged from doing, and it's, and then you look at some of the, some people are out there trying to do it, and there's plenty of YouTube videos of guys shooting themselves in the foot doing it. That's because they didn't dry fire it before. I would much rather have an AD in my living room with an orange tip round that's inert than find out the first time I go to the range and I try to clear my holster that my rig is so screwed up it's going to fire when I pull it out, and I'm going to put a round in my thigh.
Yeah. And it's also that, again, going back to what I said earlier, that conflation of ego, like how you said, ADs happen. People have ADs when they're at home trying to dry fire because they didn't check the weapon. I, to this day, after 8 years of tool manipulation with a pistol, I physically stick my finger into the chamber to make sure that there's nothing in there. And that conflation of ego crosses so many other things that people have to realize that at some level, if you don't believe that there's always something left for you to learn, walk away from whatever it is you're doing, because you're going to hit a wall, or may have already hit that wall, and you're just not going to push past it ever.
Absolutely.
You said something that resonated with me. The first time that we trained, you said, I want to get 1% better today. And I think even that 1% is probably an exaggeration of, if I got 1% better every day, hell, we're going to get pretty good pretty fast. But that, I was like, man, I want to, I was focused on this sub 1 second draw, and okay, I'm gonna have rounds at target. I'm 20 meters on a 40 by 20, 1 second. That's my standard. That's what I'm focusing on. And I was like, and you said that, and it was like this resounding bell of, I'm completely wasting my efforts. My wheels were spinning. I was ineffectively trying to get better at everything at once, instead of I was just trying to get 1% better at one thing that I was doing. And that's gonna transcend everything else bit by bit, bite by bite, till the elephant's gone and I'm now an improved shooter. Looking at what just happened this week, where a police officer in his front yard wrestling with some guys, ADs with what looks to be like a sympathetic response. He was squeezing with his left hand, his right hand went off. Like, this is a guy that carries a gun every single day. This is a guy that thinks probably that he's very proficient with that gun. I'm not going to say I can't understand how that could happen, because we train so mechanically, not for perfection, but for so much, such a desire to improve that I'd never be there. I'd never have that opportunity to do something like that, to have the sympathetic response where I'm squeezing with my left hand, with the gun in my right hand, fingers on the trigger. All right there's three things that we never do. Like, if you saw my finger on the trigger, there's a pretty good chance you're going to hit me. Like, I consider you a very good friend of mine. And like, I'm about to get hit by Alex on the range. That just doesn't happen. So how do we have this shift, both as a society and, specifically talking to professional occupational people that carry daily? There is an ego attached to that. How do we break through that barrier? Special forces guys, ranger guys, I've been with guys that man, I've been shooting for, I've been in a unit for 10 years and I don't care, dude. Like, let's get better. 1%. How do we break through that wall? It took you, non-military, a guy 10 years younger than me, that's like, no, you're being stupid right now. Just work on getting 1% better.
Yep. It's again, everyone has to find their own why. Like, why do I want to get better? And I think when people find that guiding reason, changing the rest of the behaviors becomes so much easy. And this is probably a more complicated problem than I'm alluding to. But if y'all are out there listening and you can't honest to God answer for yourself. Why am I wanting to learn these things? Why am I wanting to be better? And you also feel like that you've hit a wall in these different skills. I think for me personally, that's what I would tell people. Like we need to figure out what that guiding principle is for you, and begin to use that as your fuel to then push past that.
It's I mean, the gym that we train at, you walk in the door, and the first thing on the right, it says, "Don't bring your ego past here." I walk into jiu-jitsu, and it's written on the wall. And those are things involving a barbell and some dudes in some white pajamas. That is vastly less lethal than something that's traveling at thousands of rounds, feet per second. That would take a life in an instant. So how much more important is it for that ego to be gone?
Yeah, definitely. And they're specifically talking about speed. Let's talk about speed. And another realm that applies to the employment of the pistol is, let's look at the complete opposite, which is going slow. Like, so many people are focused on going as fast as possible, as soon as they possibly can. And what I find more often than not, if we put people on a video camera who say I can shoot sub 1.5 on a target at 20 meters, well, they have so much wasted motion and energy at the end of that draw that they aren't aware of. The first thing I'll say is, okay, now let's control ourselves going slow. And a lot of people will look at me like, what do you mean I'm going to control myself going slow? This makes no sense. But I challenge everyone out there to set a part timer to 3 seconds to 4 seconds, and to be able to have a constant tempo from draw to presentation to breaking that trigger on that part time. And what you'll find is that the act of controlling yourself going slow is going to be probably one of the most difficult things that you've done. But when you're able to do that, flipping that on its head and now saying, okay, I'm going to control myself going fast, the performance is going to be so much greater and more consistent and more scalable that you're going to wonder, how did I not ask myself to do this before? Like, something that you'd assume is so simple, right?
It was torture the first time that you made me do a 3-second par draw. I was at 3.5, and then I was at 2.1, and I was like, okay, now I'm just going to try to move at the same speed that Alex is moving, so I'm going to time that 3 second. So I was like trying to game the system just so I stopped looking like an idiot, which I totally was, and even more as an idiot when I was just then trying to game it. But then I was like, oh, okay, I smoothed out some rough edges, and things got more comfortable. Not that they got faster immediately, because they didn't, but because I smoothed off those edges, things got smoother, and then smoother became faster. And then I came and I tried to apply that to my slide lock reload, and that was like torture. I was like, because I forgot how fast my support hand moves to that magazine, draws that magazine, and then gets back up to my workspace, and then I'm fumbling in my workspace because I overshot the magwell. So I was like, all right, let's go to the par and trying to do that slow and consistent, and it was torture. And then things started getting smooth, and then things started getting fast, and I was like, god damn it, Alex.
Well, what happens as you control yourself going slow is you begin to identify where the deficiencies are in your movement. So the questions we then get to ask are, how can I move in the straightest, strongest line possible in ways that my body already knows how to move, so that I'm not learning something completely new for this tool. Again, not adapting ourselves to the tool. We're going to flip that around. I'm now going to move how I naturally move, but I'm going to adapt again that tool to me. So I'm creating a scalable platform, like everything being based on a scalable platform. And again, going slow, you're able to see where those gaps are. And like you said, controlling yourself going slow, you want to flip that around, now go fast. It becomes a much easier problem.
I think that's especially important. To my knowledge, we don't have any 5 or 6 year olds listening to the podcast. There could very well be, I don't know. But, this isn't, most of the people that are coming to the table with this are coming to it in adult life. So they have their kinesthetics, their ergonomics, their kinetic chain, everything they're doing in movement in 3-dimensional space, they've developed over a lifetime. We're not putting kids in the agoge. This isn't Sparta. although I wish it was sometimes, where we can teach them, that muscle memory, sword and scabbard from a young age. So you exactly right. You have to adapt the tool to the movements that are natural to you, and that's especially true. People say, well, I have some type of impairment, whether it's a visual impairment or a physical impairment. And we've had students and we've shown that those don't have to get in the way. We've said it before. It's not about what you can't do. It's about what you can do. And you can adapt. These are tools. These tools can be adapted. Maybe it's not off the shelf the way you need it to be, but we can get it that way, or we can show you how to make slight modifications and get it that way. And it's not, your eyes are already looking at the target, like you said. Your fingers are already pointing at the target. Why would you, if you're just moving your head down to where the sights are, you might as well be shooting from the hip or shooting from a bench rest, because your body's already doing the right thing. You just have to integrate that tool into the engagement.
This entire time, we're talking about these really complex, sophisticated movements of body that's using a mechanical, beautifully designed and engineered tool. That tool has been engineered and designed for our use. Like the purpose of why those engineers sat there, they looked at hand shape, they looked at finger strength, they looked at the way that our eyes worked, and we're going to make sights that are going to work with those eyes. But there are options out there. Not every tool is exactly the same. Not every hammer is the same. Not every screwdriver is the same. You're not going to build a house with a drill. You have to have tools for the job. What do you think for modification? Where is that sweet spot? I tell people, save the money on the gun and the glass and go find an instructor and get better. The guy that goes out and spends $3,000 on a gun, he should spend $500 on a gun and $2,500 on instruction. With that said, there is a point where our guns, we're getting to a point where we are looking for very specific performance. We're looking for a specific slide release or sights or mag wells or a gun or a caliber or a grain. Like, those are nuanced, but generally, where's that sweet spot for somebody when it comes to modification of the firearm?
Yeah, I think the single most important thing that you can do, when you're looking to modify your own firearm is, first, more than anything, figure out, do your sights work for you? And that's to say that, again, the most important part of this performance chain is your eyes. And if your eyes can't find your sights, they're not the right sights for you. So the first question I always ask people is, how easy is it for you to pick up your sights downrange? After that, it's getting that tool comfortable in your hands. If that tool doesn't feel comfortable, at all, it's probably not the right tool to begin with. If it is comfortable, but you feel it slipping, well, then there's the easy things you can do there with grip tape or changing those grip panels. And then once we get into movement based modifications, is that trigger pad the right shape for how you're pulling on that trigger? Do you prefer might you prefer a flat trigger as opposed to that curved trigger? When you're going for that magazine insert, are you missing that mag well because it doesn't have that mag well because it doesn't have a beveled edge? So is there maybe something there that you need? And on those magazines themselves, are you having trouble ripping that out of the gun? Do you need a base pad to help to assist you there? We're looking for those basic points of interaction where we're working with that tool to say, is there something that I can do to make this work better for me, right? About how I'm looking to manipulate that tool. Is there something that I can do to make it more usable to me?
This is like Pandora's box. So you go down the rabbit hole of modification. Glock guys that you can. It's like a Honda Civic. You can lower it, you can raise it, you can put rims on it, you can put a muffler on it. Like, am I on RMR sights? Am I using an aim point? Am I using a Trijicon? Am I using an RMR? Am I bevel tail? Am I putting on a magwell? What barrel am I going with? A bullet? What? The extent is insane, and so a lot of it is unnecessary. And then you get down to the kit where we're talking about holsters or magazines. Do I want upright? Do I want them counted forward? Do I want retention? It just keeps going and going and going. And to some degree, there has to be a point where we're saying, stop worrying about that shit and start drilling.
Yeah, people obsess over the wrong things. That's absolutely true. And I think people even worse off will buy these tools that they want to treat as their babies, and it's like, that's great if this is your gun just to go to the range and be a bullseye tool. But if you're telling me that this is your carry weapon, and you have an issue with dropping that tool on the ground, there's something fundamentally going wrong there that's gonna interrupt your thought processes when you actually have to use that tool. So yeah, I mean, you can go as far down this rabbit hole as you possibly want, but at the end of the day, we have to again ask the question, why am I carrying in the first place? And does the tool is the tool that I'm carrying, in that defensive practical application, in that mindset, have I built it for the right reasons, or have I purchased it for the right reasons? Like, is it, or do I just have it, just to be the Ferrari, the shiny piece in the among the friends?
If your firearm is that fragile origami sculpture that you can't drop, you need to get a different firearm, And we talk about the mods, and I love the way you put that. It's those points of physical interaction are the most important. It's not, a ported barrel is great, okay, but that's not necessarily a point of physical interaction, okay? Changing a spring from this to this, or a buffer from this to this, or all these other things, those are not points of physical interaction. So it's so minute, the difference those things are going to make. And I look at how much money people put in the little back plate on the back of the Glock with a little Punisher logo on it, or however much they paid somebody to do Cerakote in pink, black, and gray camouflage, or whatever it might be. And it's like, like you said, these basic points of interaction. And to me, most guns, and all three of us in this room, because I know what all three of us tend to carry, we all have some firearms that have some custom sights or some custom glass on them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But by and large, a lot of weapons that you get out of the box, like you say, it's been engineered. Those sights they're not crap sights. They can definitely be worked with, and your money would probably be better spent. I mean, yeah, they look cool. Having something that glows that people on the range are going to ask you about, that's great. But those little points of interaction, whether it's the trigger or the magazine well or weighting your magazines or whatever it might be, those are the points at which you're going to really make a difference. And when you talk about the beveled magazine well and the weighted magazines, that's another thing that people just don't want to practice. They want to go up there and fire a magazine, fire 17 rounds and hear report of steel 17 times, and then casually do a reload and do it again. And that's not practicality, because when you're in a gunfight, the chances of you having to do that mag change are really there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. One of the things that I do when I'm on the range is I rarely load more than 5 rounds into a magazine. Most of the time it's 3, just because one of the skills that I like to practice more than anything are those mag reloads. And I'm a huge proponent of deliberate movement. So anytime I'm interacting with a tool at all, like I never just pick up a pistol and handle it in any way other than I'd be actually using that tool. And again, one of those movements that I feel is most important is that reload. So I force myself to reload as many times as possible. There's actually a drill that a lot of y'all out, or the people out there can look up. It's called the Burkett reload, which I feel is one of the most valuable reload drills out there. It's again something you run dry. You can practice it 1,000 times at home, but it hammers home that simple movement of take that magazine from feed source and make it find its home, which is that inside that mag well. Practicing that over and over and over again. It's again deliberate practice of deliberate movements all the time.
It's fun shooting. Like people who are maybe listening to this, like, oh my God,
We're not trying to take that away from you.
I love even doing it this way. I love going to the range. I love it more. I love sitting there with coaches and people that are on a similar level with me, and we are fighting over and struggling and clawing and scratching for that 1% improvement. I mean that is such a fulfilling experience. This is coming from a guy that I grew up shooting tannerite, like this. Hey, let's go blow something up, and then as a teenager working on ranches and working on farms and shooting off horseback.
Beer.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, let's not take. God bless America. God bless the Second Amendment. We didn't win this country from the British by saying, hey, is it okay if we throw your tea in the harbor? We threw their tea in the harbor, and then we started killing them. So that this is ingrained in kind of the American culture. And now we're in a phase, we're in a period where weak men have created hard times, and these men need to rise to the occasion and become hard again. We're in hard times. We're in scary times. We're in times where we need men and women to know how to use these tools. We need men and women to understand that if they are inefficient in a moment of unbelievable chaos and nightmare-like horrifying experience, that people are going to die. I look at San Bernardino, I look at Orlando, New Jersey, even Boston. Like there were moments where if there was somebody there with the right training and the right skills, countless lives would have been saved. And we're there. It's going to get worse. When you're looking at Sweden and you're looking at Germany and you're looking at France, like it's not going to get better. That is coming. That is at our doorstep. There's no more opportunity for us to be laissez-faire and lackadaisical with our training time. Jump on board, get on this train, hop on the Alex Acosta wagon, and realize that change has happened and you need to get on board.
What do you have coming up, Alex? What's next in line for you with Sheepdog?
So one thing I'm looking forward to most is developing that second level. That second level course, getting all of our alumni that have already taken that first level and taking them to that next step. But more than anything, what I look forward to is, guys out there, is meeting those shooters that are looking to take that next jump. And how do I think about, how do I understand my use of this tool? And for me, the biggest challenge and actually the most rewarding thing about all this for me is getting those people who are uncomfortable, who don't feel like they can use that tool effectively, and getting to them to a point where they understand how they're generating performance, that they understand what goes wrong when downrange, what they expected didn't happen, that they're able to ask those questions, really of themselves, and then developing that mindset where they say, now I want to bring my tribe up. Like I'm going to be that person that goes home, and I now have the understanding to say, to tell my group of friends that even if this isn't something you're currently interested in, I'm going to tell you why I am and why I feel that might be important to you. Because for me, I think one of the reasons we're all here together is we all want to bring our collective tribe up, and I think that's what you were kind of hinting on there, Tim.
Yeah, start now. Yeah. Like there's when do you start? Now. When's the second best time to start? Right now. Like get going right now. How can people find you? Do you want social media? Like I follow you on Instagram. I love your videos. I watch you shoot something, and I'm like, oh, cool. We'll shoot that tomorrow. And I text Shane. I'm like, hey, buddy, guess what we're doing for training tomorrow? Alex just posted a video. Son of a bitch.
Yeah, through Instagram, through Facebook, through Sheepdog. Find us on Facebook. The one thing I tell everyone is never hesitate to ask a question. The only wrong question is the question that isn't asked, right?
Yeah.
I'm always available, and I love more than anything understanding problems. Like if you think that there's some issue that you have had trouble working through, you don't understand why a thing is going wrong. I love more than anything, diagnosing those problems and helping you think through something, because every time I get a touch point with someone new, that's more knowledge for me. That's something new for me. So again, please don't hesitate to reach out, and everyone can find us on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Sheepdog Response weren't easy to find on social. Alex is Rogue Acosta on Instagram, and right now, if I'm looking at videos of, he's throwing a sandbag over his shoulder and doing sprints and shooting quickly. This is good work here. This is like his last video, which was this week. He's literally throwing a sandbag over his shoulder, doing some sprints, and then just blink, 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 blink. So, but we've been talking pistol stuff a long time. You're also passionate about really high precision marksmanship, to include long rifles. one of my massive passions. Do you think that those crossover, that those transcend, that the skills in one complement the other, or do you think it's a kind of a detriment? Where
No, I think they absolutely complement each other. The precision mindset, more than anything, forces you to think about how you're going to create that result, and establishing that mentality where you're thinking through how you're generating performance, on a range, and codifying those mental cycles, like so that you have in your mind a psychological basis for why you're doing a thing, like, and that could be that you can tell yourself definitively that this is the strongest, most economic way to move my body to create that result downrange. Again, coming from that precision background, I think that more than anything, having to have that environmental awareness of how we're going to interpret the environment in the landscape to send that round downrange onto the target. I think it's the same problem, just different application.
What do we have coming up on the calendar? What courses we got coming down the pike?
Oh man! So I think next we're in Washington or Washington D.C., Virginia area, law enforcement and military back to back, daisy chained. We have the founder of Modern Army Combatives, Matt Larson, black belt. He's going to be there. He's going to be one of the combatives instructors. Literally the guy that founded the idea of the current form of combatives for the military. He's going to be one of the instructors there. And then after that, we're going to be back here in Texas, doing a lot of law enforcement through the course of April. So if you're law enforcement in Texas, that's kind of your only opportunity here. We're going to be training into May, and then May, June, July, August, we kind of close the doors. Just what we demand of the people that come and train with us is so physical that being in Texas 100-degree heat is you're watching some heat casualties go down. Not ideal. We also want ideal training conditions so that we can be very efficient with our time. So first thing coming up is Washington, D.C., and then some law enforcement training in April.
And very likely another Spectrum of Tactical Emergency Care end of April too. So that's in the works too, because we are overfull on the class that's going on right now, and we're going to it looks like we're already going to have enough people to fill another class coming up then. But we may end up trying to make more slots because I want people to get this knowledge, and especially as we're getting ready to go on a brief hiatus. But this is awesome. This is just such great stuff, and everybody listening. I've been toting a gun since I was a teenager and doing so professionally for over 30 years. I am when Alex is talking on the range, I am completely silent, eyes fixed on what he's doing, because the man is an expert. You're hearing it from me, you're hearing it from Tim Kennedy. You guys have all seen, if you haven't seen Alex on Instagram, you've all seen videos of what Tim can do with a gun. And this is who we look to for instruction. So this resource is there. It's available for you. Go to sheepdogresponse.com. Follow us on Facebook, Facebook.com/sheepdogresponse. Seek out Alex on Instagram. Watch his videos. You will be a believer. Take advantage of this training because it is unparalleled, in my opinion.
In DC, we're going to have Marshall Luton, who is another phenomenal shooter. He's fast, but most importantly, he's a brilliant instructor that is passionate about passing on that knowledge. The bar is set very, very, very high for the people that we're going to be interacting with. And, I'm humbled a lot, which is not a fun thing when you've been in an SF for like 15 years and you've been a professional athlete for 18 years. And then you're like, this guy is faster at me than everything. Not like one thing, like everything. So swallow that pride, get rid of that ego, and start getting better now.
Because your ego is going to kill you, ultimately.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Definitely is.
Yeah. Alex, brother, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Appreciate you guys. Great talking.
Tim, as always, a pleasure, my friend.
This is fun.
This is always fun.
We talked about the subtleties of shooting for an hour. Not even like actual shooting. Like we didn't even go into specific drills. Just the philosophy and the mechanics of how to use a tool. reach out to us, listen more. We're going to be going a lot more into the structured approach. Okay, all right. So people are like, all right, I got it. I want to get better. How? I think the why has been what we've been talking about. The why of the thing. Now the how is next. So let's get there, guys, together.
Absolutely. You have to want to get better. You have to recognize that you need to get better, set goals, eat that elephant in small bites, and sooner or later you'll get through it. I think that's some awesome stuff. I think we can put this one to bed. I'm going to close with what I think is a very fitting quote from perhaps the most famous, or if you will, infamous lawman of the Old West, Wyatt Earp, who said, "Fast is fine, but accuracy is everything. In a gunfight, you need to take your time in a hurry." Remember that, everybody. Train hard, get to the range tomorrow. See us next week, and be a sheepdog.
You have been listening to the Sheepdog Project. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/sheepdog response. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent any larger entity, public or private.